Welcome back once again. And as we know that amidst the rapidly evolving regional developments, the ceasefire that was reached between the U.S. and Iran have been successfully taken until this very moment, except for the breaching of the in Lebanon by Israel. And it is, of course, leveling paramount importance because it coincides with active Egyptian diplomatic efforts that led those negotiations to reach this agreement, and of course Egypt detaining the strikes over our brothers and sisters in the Gulf area by Iran, and this in result have stopped those strikes. Let us welcome over the phone for more details Dr. Fouad Abdelrazek, Professor of International Policy and an economic analyst. Good morning, Dr. Fouad.
Good morning to you, and thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure to have you, sir. How does His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi hail for the ceasefire agreement reflect Egypt's leading role inside the region? Because everybody's following the footsteps of Egypt, especially when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to peace agreement, when it comes to prevailing peace and security in the region. We have been recognized worldwide, not only in the Arab region, by diplomacy.
As a matter of fact, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi praised for the ceasefire, though very fragile up till now, signals that Egypt wants to be seen as a stabilizing regional actor that supports de-escalation, diplomacy, and negotiated security framework rather than open-ended confrontation as we have witnessed recently. Egypt's public line also makes clear that any lasting agreement must take Gulf, Iraqi, and Jordanian security concerns into account, which places Cairo politically close to its Arab partners, with in the meantime preserving room to engage all sides. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi joined voices with all other world leaders and Arab leaders to praise this one, but in the meantime was to develop it more and more, not to be only temporary ceasefire, but to be lasting ceasefire, and to reassure us again to Arab Gulf countries that Egypt is behind them wholeheartedly, and not on the surface as it might seem. But as well, we need to remember very well that Egypt took part in the negotiations that took place in Pakistan with the help of Turkey as well. And this actually paved the way for the concrete agreements that we have seen now. Let's not forget this role, because it's really important. Though what happens now is that China that held this one, but Egypt's role was very important in that sense.
Right. Of course, the moment that this agreement was effected on earth, every country was asking the universal question, which is, how will this truce affect energy security and the prices of oil and gas, and on top of all, the stability of global markets and supply chain?
This is very important effort, and this is a very important step, because the markets have been affected since the beginning of this escalation, and all the markets actually breathe a lot now that this fire is, and we have seen, the drop of the oil prices so far, which is a good sign actually to stabilize the markets in this sense. And this is one of the aims, because Egypt as well is affected by this, all the world is affected by this, and any ceasefire will help, put an end to this fragile market and this important source of energy and the flow, especially when it comes to restorative forms.
Right. Egypt has an ongoing voice of full support for all the GCC countries and the Gulf area. And earlier, Egypt has voiced full support for Kuwait and ongoing regional tensions, and have called for de-escalation and renewed diplomatic efforts. That was statements released by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah Sisi. Even there was a visit by Minister Dr. Badr Abdel Ati to Kuwait, delivering the strong message of condemnation by President Abdel Fattah Sisi for the Kuwaiti Emir, and this particular message confirmed the Cairo's solidarity with Kuwait following recent attacks targeting the country. How would you assess the objectives of Minister Badr Abdel Ati to Kuwait, and an all assessment of Egypt's solidarity with its Gulf countries, brotherly countries?
This visit by the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Abdel Ati, is very important, especially to Kuwait, because it was harmed a lot, actually, because of this east coming from Iran, and it really signals, how the importance attached by Egypt to the stability of the Gulf area, and in particular Kuwait. So the visit appears aimed at coordinating Arab positions after the U.S.-Iran ceasefire, reassuring Kuwait and other Gulf states of Egypt's support during a sensitive moment, and continuing Cairo's wider de-escalation diplomacy across the region. As well, the visit was explicitly linked to discussing regional developments and aligning positions after the ceasefire, and Egypt's trying to support the Gulf states and show that it is wholeheartedly with it, and it might not seem on the surface as such, but deep down it is like that, and I think the Gulf states as well realize this. They might not express it, explicitly, but deep down it is that feeling that it's Egypt, and Egypt's role has ever been supporting for its brothers in the Gulf.
What are the political messages, out of your own assessment, behind Egypt's condemnation of the attacks of the Kuwaiti consulate in Basra?
Actually, again, this is Egypt's condemnation, which is very clear, and it sends, clear messages. Attacks on diplomatic missions, are unacceptable under international law, and Cairo stands firmly with Kuwait, and that the regional confrontation must not be allowed to spill into attacks on sovereign diplomatic sites at embassies, etc. And now, by invoking the Vienna Convention and the invulnerability of missions, Egypt was also defending the legal rules that protect interstate relations in a crisis.
Right. How does the targeting of the oil facilities and civilian infrastructure in countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, would affect the regional security of the whole region?
Actually, they deepen insecurity on several levels at once, economically, by disturbing oil, gas, refining, and export infrastructure. Strategically, of course, from the strategic point of view, by exposing the vulnerability of the Gulf energy hubs and civilian networks, and politically by widening the war's footprint beyond the original battlefield. So in this case, any damage or disruption affecting Saudi refining capacity, Qatar LNG, for example, infrastructure, UAE gas facilities, and the Kuwait refineries, which shows how such attacks can threaten both regional stability and global supply chains.
How does Egypt balance from political support with its call for de-escalation and its diplomatic solutions at the same time, from your point of view?
That's a very difficult route, actually, but it has to be because Egyptian diplomacy is likely to keep playing at a bridging role. urging restraint, coordinating Arab positions, backing ceasefire efforts, and pressing for a longer-term settlement that protects Gulf sovereignty, shipping lanes, and regional stability. Cairo's messaging and Abdellatif's recent regional consultation suggests that Egypt wants to act not only as a supporter of de-escalation, but also as an organizer of Arab consensus at a moment when regional fragmentation would carry very high costs.
In what ways could Egypt leverage its relations to mediate and prevent further escalation? From your own point of view,
mediation is very important, but in the meantime, you have to keep the momentum now, although the recent level of might, make it more difficult, but there should be more mediation and more talking to parties, even talking to the United States of America to ask Israel actually to stop attacking Lebanon. It has been said that Lebanon was not involved in the ceasefire agreement, but it should be some effort to that extent.
Right. From your own point of view, in light of what we're talking about, how does Egypt's diplomatic or messages contribute to reduce tensions in the region rather than inflaming them, only through diplomatic solutions without restoring to military confrontation?
Egypt knows quite well that any confrontation, any war should end on the negotiation table, and this is strategically its own position since the beginning, because Egypt does not call for involvement and escalation of wars or tensions in that sense. And this is why its position from the very beginning is very wise. And, it has, because Egypt as well has some open routes to other regional, even including Iran. And this is what sometimes, some countries do not understand this fact. By keeping a very narrow, even channel of negotiation with others, even whatever these parties are, is helping actually a lot in giving this. Egypt is a regional power actually that has a force that should be reckoned with in this case. But negotiation is not an easy thing. People think it's easy and to condemn whatever. Right. But Egypt is effectively doing this, and I think, as I said at the beginning, that reaching this kind of agreement, however fragile, is important, and the role it played before this. This is very important to stress actually, that the effort done when the foreign minister went to Islamabad, went to Pakistan, and with Turkey as well. That paves the way a lot actually for the agreement we have now.
Right. On that note, of course, Dr. Fouad Abdelrezq, the Professor of International Policy and the political and economic analyst, thank you so much for talking to us in the Breakfast Show. And now it's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi expressed strong support for the development, and remarks reflected both relief and cautious optimism. And he underscored Egypt's long-standing commitment to stability, diplomacy, and peaceful conflict resolutions. More details.
The recent announcement of a ceasefire agreement between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran has been widely welcomed as a significant step toward de-escalation in one of the world's most volatile regions. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi expressed strong support